Guys, I'm going to wait just 2 more minutes because I know there's a couple more people coming, but just want to ask you guys in the next 2-3 minutes before I start, think about, and I'm asking this for a very particular reason, think about what is it that you want to get out of today and out of the next 8 weeks, and try to be as specific as possible. I'm asking this for a very particular reason, and it'll become abundantly clear why I'm asking that as I speak today. But try to articulate what is it exactly that you want to get out of today, meaning what I'm about to present, and then the next 8 weeks. And try to formulate in your mind what that is. Try to express to me what it is that you really want me to deliver. Because I promise you, I will deliver that. But can you articulate exactly what you want me to give you? I'm going to get, guys, there's chairs here, here, there, and there. All up here. Just fill it in. We call these black chairs the punishment chairs, because you have to sit up on chairs. The people who are truly late.
I want to make sure I'm sharp.
Yep.
So
Get that extra sleep.
$10 under those front.
Yeah,
but I
that's
just
$10
saw there's
under
no
those
money
chairs.
there.
Yeah. More than $10 under those chairs. So, Beth, right here. And I know, there we go. Come on in, guys. Here it is. These are the because.
Oh, yeah, I'm sharp.
These are the because you were a minute late chairs.
It's not a minute late yet.
You got it front row seat.
Hello, everybody.
Good morning. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it 9:29?
Yes, it is, for real.
Perfect. Perfect.
9:29.
Perfect. 9:29.
See, we're short.
Perfect. Just on time. And I do know that we got at least 2 more people coming. So there he is. No, you can't move the chairs. Oh, get there for a reason. We're all set up. All right, so let's start. So just let me just get a couple of answers. Like what? Just tell me. Just very as accurately as you can. What do you want to get?
I'm looking for not just the physical, but the nutritional and the mental combination, that holistic approach to be the best version of myself in the 8 weeks, at the end of 8 weeks, not just in one of those categories.
Perfect. Guys, there's a chair up here. Let me just grab a couple of chairs. John, there's 2 chairs right there. Anybody else? Yeah.
Tell I'm a teacher, I never raised my hand. So I need to lose a little weight, and I want to just fortify my immune system.
Okay, great. Give me 2 more. I need it.
I've done it before. It works.
Yeah? Yeah, you know it works.
It works.
Exactly.
I know it works. I'm ready to.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You know it works. Anybody else? Give me 1 more. What you really want to get. What you're hoping to get. What I hope I deliver.
You know this, but I just need to finally understand, how my body works
Yeah.
for myself.
Perfect. So some of you have done this many times, and a lot of you are kind of ahead of the curve. But I'll continue to deliver more information because, like I've said many times before, I don't stop learning, and every time I learn something, I try to deliver it to you guys. But let me just say this, and you alluded to it. The most important thing, by far, because doing the things I'm going to tell you to do are actually easy. The hardest thing to do is to cultivate. Like this is what I'm good at. Meaning like I'm really good at this shit, which is what I'm about to tell you. It's just setting up rituals. It's just setting up rituals for yourself. It's creating a code for yourself where you don't break it. You say, this is what's important, this is what matters to me, and it becomes clearly worth it over time. There are cliche expressions, things like, there's nothing that tastes as good as being fit feels. But you wouldn't know that unless you experienced it, right? You may have some idea of what you think that is like, but you wouldn't know, right, unless you implemented these things. The truth is that it just comes down to rituals. So I'm going to give you a whole bunch of knowledge, right here, Renat, right here. It actually says your name right underneath it. So I'm going to give you guys a whole bunch of knowledge. But the difference there's a big difference between knowledge and understanding. The word understanding literally means, right? It doesn't even make sense. What does it mean to understand? To stand under. What does that mean? But the truth is, when you look up the word understand, the word under has meant different things through time as it got translated. And it really means amongst. It means to stand amongst. To stand amongst the knowledge. Stand amongst other people, other things that support that knowledge. And wisdom is applying that knowledge. So I'm going to give you, so it's knowledge means nothing unless you apply it. And the way to apply it is to create these rituals. So I'm going to share with you guys, as I share this knowledge, I'm going to tell you how I implement this knowledge so that it can become wisdom for you, applied knowledge. Okay, everything I'm going to say makes sense. Nothing that I'm going to say are you going to go, holy shit, I don't think that's right. It's going to make abundantly clear sense. I'm going to drop a whole bunch of knowledge on you where you guys go, I didn't realize how consequential that was. And coming out of COVID and everything that's going on, I'm going to explain things about the immune system and things that are being talked about now in terms of food and behaviors that are more powerful than even the medications that they give for COVID. So let's sort of get into this a little bit. And I'm gonna talk first really about what I call, and again, I know many of you have heard some of this stuff before, so just bear with me. I'm going to start off with this first ritual. The first ritual is simply this. If it's in your home, you're going to eat it. Period. It doesn't matter how mentally strong you think you are. If it's in your home, you will eat it. If there's one thing you have control over, it's what you put in your pantry, it's what you put in your refrigerator. And the most common thing I hear is, but it's for the kids. Okay, let me explain something to you. In the past 30 years ago, type 2 diabetes in children was literally unheard of. Just look up the rates. And today, type 2 diabetes in kids is not uncommon. We are making kids more and more unhealthy. We are doing things to this generation that are terribly consequential. It will only get worse. It will only get worse. And we have to start treating this, right? So would you say to an alcoholic that's recovering at dinner, would you say, hey, want me to buy you a whiskey? Would you say that to them? No, right? So if we're in a situation where we know that childhood obesity is an issue, should we be saying to our kids, hey, what do you want for dessert? There is a cognitive dissonance between what's going on, because obesity is the most consequential thing for disease. The most consequential. The thing that you die most of is heart disease. Okay, closely to cancer. And all you have to do is look at the relationships between obesity and cancer, heart disease, obesity, and cancer. Look at those links and you realize this is a problem. We wouldn't do this to an alcoholic, right? So why do we do it to our kids? So the whole paradigm needs to shift on how we think. And I'm saying this all to you guys right now because that's the excuse I hear. It's for the kids. If it's in your home, you will eat it. So the first thing is to set your home up, and that's part of the code. You set the code that this is what things need to look like. This is how. Now I'm going to, obviously things need to titrate up a certain way, right? What I'm going to show you today are principles, concepts to try to implement over time. And everybody's going to find their own way to implement this. They're going to find their own compromises. And I expect that. But I'm going to be very reasonable in my approach. And I'm going to show you very clearly things you can do that are not hard. The next thing is to understand that sugar is public enemy number one. They're in the food industry. You have Kraft, you have General Mills, you have all these companies that are literally billion-dollar industries. And they, believe it or not, they get together to talk. And they discuss their latest information, their latest discoveries. It behooves them to get together to recognize what they've discovered about you, the consumer. And one of the most interesting things that they talk about are literally they call it the crown jewels. The crown jewels are this, I'm going to tell you: sugar, salt, and fat. And people in this industry, and not like the bottom workers, CEOs, major people in this industry have become so upset with the obesity epidemic because they know what's happening. They know what they're doing. The combination of sugar, salt, and fat, these crown jewels. So people have tried to speak up and say, you know, this is not right what we're doing to people. We know it's causing overeating. That's what the sugar, salt, and fat does. It causes the overeating. So they tried to manipulate this. They tried to lower sugar. They tried to lower salt. They tried to use better fats. And you know what happens every time? Take a guess. Profits go down. Profits go down. So they say we don't fuck with the crown jewels. Okay? But here's the thing. I'm going to give you my crown jewels. And just like the crown jewels of these companies, here's the thing. I'm telling you guys, the secret to these billion-dollar companies is simply sugar, salt, and fat. So why don't all of you go create a billion-dollar company knowing that that's the crown jewels? The reason why you don't do that is because you don't know all of the other subtleties. What they're doing to those salts in particular. What types of fats they're using. What are the ratios of sugar that they're putting in each product? Like, how sugary should you make ketchup? They literally call it the bliss zone. That's what it's called. It's just the right amount of sugar. And what form of sugar? And by the way, what about the texture? What about what they call the mouthfeel of it? How it literally feels in your mouth. So you don't know the subtleties. Similarly, I'm going to give you my crown jewels. The problem is you don't know the subtleties of them, but you'll learn them. I'm going to tell you what the crown jewels are, and then you could walk away. But what you'll notice is that you don't know the subtleties. You think you know, but you don't know. You don't understand. So here I'm going to give you 4 crown jewels right now. And I promise you right now, if you just did this, you could walk up, stand up, walk away, and I promise you, if you just did it, you'll be a happier, healthier, leaner person. But it's going to be the subtleties that you learn. Number 1 is eat organic, especially meat. And I'm going to go into abundant detail as to why this is. Because you are an animal. Okay, does everybody understand that you're an animal? And you eat animals. And what is the main way that all animals protect themselves from toxins? Does anybody know? How does your body protect itself from toxins? In fact, fat is the main storage of toxins. So now, the animal you're eating, you cook it, which makes the animal more carcinogenic. And when you cook something, okay, there's more carcinogens. There's advanced glycation end products, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a second. So now you're taking the toxins in that fat, heating them up, and then eating them. Well, what is it that they do to these animals that are non-organic? You guys probably have seen enough documentaries and and have heard me talk enough by now to recognize that it's a lot of hormones and a lot of bad things, that they, a lot of antibiotics that they throw into these animals, which have consequences in your body. They become your hormones. They become your antibiotics in your body. So how animals raised really make a difference, and then how they're fed really makes a difference. Cows aren't meant to eat corn, but we give it to them because it makes the meat eat a certain way. But there's consequences to what it does to its gut microbiome and what it does to the cow itself. So eating organic, especially animals, is really important. But you're going to understand why plants are so important as well, especially if you're interested in a really strong immune system. And you won't just have to listen to me this entire 8 weeks. I will send you world-renowned experts in cancer research so that you can hear them echoing the things that you know I've been saying since 2008 when we started the UTC. But the bottom line is this. When you talk about pesticides, herbicides, fungicides on plants, does everybody recognize that plants create their own? If you take a plant that's in Wegmans right now, that's not organic, you just put it down and you analyze it, 99% of the pesticides of the plant will be endogenous to the plant. It'll be the pesticides that the plant naturally makes. The problem is, or the issue here is that, when we start putting pesticides on plants, they become weaker in fighting off their invaders. We want plants to be strong and resilient, and when we eat them, we want to benefit from them. And unfortunately, when we give them pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides, we do not get anywhere near the same benefit for our immune function than if they're treated with pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. Never mind the fact that you don't want to be eating pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides because it messes with your gut microbiome terribly, which we'll talk about. So eating organic is critical, and I'm giving you a very surface Cliff Notes understanding of this. So that's one crown jewel. The second crown jewel is, I alluded to it earlier, is you cannot, reducing sugar in your diet is one of the most important things you could do. We did a whole 40-day challenge on insulin resistance, and what did we realize? That the people who did it realized, we're talking about 2/3 of the people realized that they're pre-diabetic. And another third realized that they likely are type 2 diabetic. And these are people that are, quote unquote, seemingly healthy. The average person walking down today is pre-diabetic. The average person walking around. It is an epidemic. And if you're talking about immune function, if you're talking about metabolic health, if you're talking about overall wellness, at the end of the day, it comes down to how much, not just sugar, how much refined carbs, how much food are you eating? But sugar is by far the most easily consequential, and it is by far the most addictive. It works on your brain. But here's what's interesting, and here's how companies get away with it. I could do devil's advocate on any topic. You could be like, Tom, tell me why you shouldn't eat meat. Tell me why, okay, and there's reasons that I could go into. But part of my reasoning would be bullshit. So let me give you the bullshit. Here, I could argue why sugar has nothing to do with gaining weight. And that's what sugar companies do. They're really good at doing it. Because they are massive, massive industries. And the truth is that they're right from a certain point of view. If you've heard me say this, if you listen to my videos, you've heard me say this a million times. At the end of the day, your body's a black box. There's a whole bunch of things in that black box that matter to how much you eat and losing weight. How much muscle do you have? What is your hormones like? How much sleep did you get? How much did you move your body? What's your thyroid function like? So here's how much food you ate. It goes into the black box. when it comes out at the end of the day, did you burn more calories or not? And that's it. That's all it comes down to. You either did or didn't. So if you're telling me I didn't lose weight, what does that mean? It means that the food that you put here, that when it went into the black box, it did not equate to a calorie deficit. It's that simple. So here's what sugar companies do. They go like this. Okay, let's just assume your average metabolic rate is 2,000 calories a day. That's what you burn. Okay, we're going to give you 2,000 calories of sugar. It goes into the black box. Will you gain weight at the end of the day? Yes or no?
No.
No. So they'll say it has nothing to do with gaining weight. And they're right. What's the problem? The problem is what these companies know. It is the easiest way to get people to overeat. But here's the other problem. It only happens in about a third of the population. The third of the population that have addictive type brains, that have a very particular dopamine type brain. Okay? So, and that's genetic. So it's just like a gambler. How come everybody's not a compulsive gambler? How come everybody's not addicted to, going 100 miles an hour on a motorcycle down a road? How come everybody's not into, MMA or getting punched in the face or how come there are things where you realize behaviors that are high risk give people a reward, and that reward is dopamine. Well, similarly, sugar is high reward for some people. So they also use the argument, well, it doesn't apply to everybody. And they're right. So I just gave you the counter argument. And this is what happens to some version of this, of things that I will say throughout these 8 weeks, where you will find somebody else saying something counter to me. And I encourage you, call me out on it, because I promise you, I'm going to give you a better explanation. These are the crown jewels. Okay, so it's organic, it's sugar. Sugar includes alcohol. Okay, alcohol is ethanol. That ethanol is a type of sugar. If it ends in OL, it's a type of sugar. Dairy and gluten. Now I'm gonna explain to you guys. You can eat certain forms of dairy. You can eat certain forms of gluten, and I'm gonna go into detail. I'm gonna compromise with you guys, because this is where everybody breaks down. But I will promise you this. If you eat highly refined carbs, meaning things that are highly processed, they're in a bag, they're in a box, you're going to overeat them. They're going to be deprived of a lot of fiber, or they're going to be relegated to one very particular source of fiber. If you eat complex carbs, whole foods, things that are that come out of the ground or are minimally processed, you're going to benefit. You're going to realize that this is much harder to overeat. You're more satiated. You're going to get more fiber, and I'll show you even how to get more protein from it. You combine highly refined carbs like gluten. Now, gluten is a type of lectin. Some of you know your research. Some of you know that lectins have emerged over the past 10 years as a problem for many people. But gluten is a type of lectin. And for some people, it's highly reactive. But it's on a spectrum. Everybody is reactive to it. It's just that some people are way over here, and some people it's way down here. And in some people, if you combine gluten with dairy, which we're talking specifically about lactose, you're going to notice that it's exponentially worse. Again, dairy is on a spectrum. It's not just like I'm either lactose intolerant or not. It's sort of like allergies. Like, you notice like it's ragweed season. Some people are like dying. Some people are kind of bad. Some people feel it a little bit. It's not like you're either dying or not. Gluten and lactose are just like that. And these two things are so often overeaten, it gets worse and worse and worse for people over time. They are overeaten. They're in everything. People love it. And then you add the sugar to it. There's your three highly inflammatory things. The sugar, the gluten, the dairy. There it is. And then you add what I've been talking about a lot over the past year. I've absorbed myself in this research, is if you look at linoleic acid, which is a type of omega-6. Now, if you go back in the old UTC manual, you will see that there are particular pages where I talk about the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3, how much that has changed over time, and the inflammatory markers that that's created. That's not new. What's new is that we know that it's relegated to this very specific type of omega-6, which is linoleic acid, which you can pretty much guarantee you're getting most of it from plant oils. So especially things like soybean oil, canola oil, rapeseed oil, stuff like that. And you're all going, oh, I don't cook with any of that. You're consuming it every time you open a box, package, or can. You're consuming it every time you order DoorDash. Because all restaurants cook with these types of oils because they're really cheap. Soybean oil is the most common thing cooked with. And one of the things I'm going to spend a lot of time with in this challenge is teaching you guys the problems with linoleic acid and how linked it is to obesity and oxidative stress. Oxidative stress being the thing that causes almost all disease. Oxidative stress. How long does it take to clear linoleic acid from your fat cells? Its half-life is almost 2 years. So if you decided, you know what, I'm going to stop consuming these plant oils and I'm going to start, being real smart, real judicious, you're going to realize that it takes about 2 years to clear. And this is one of the things that maps also just onto how you look, how you carry fat. And I'm going to explain to you guys, what does it look like in a fat cell? What happens with insulin resistance? It's because the fat cells get so freaking big. That's what happens. And when it's packed, jam-packed with linoleic acid, these oils that are super prone to oxidative stress, what happens when things like the sun hits your skin? The sun penetrates your skin all the way through. Red light goes through like 12 inches. Blue light goes through a couple inches. I mean, it's going way deep into your skin. So what happens when literally this radiation is hitting these oils in your fat cells that are prone to oxidative stress? What do you think is happening? It causes oxidative stress. It causes redness. It causes sunburn. It will do these things. Now I'm saying all this because I want you guys to understand that it really titrates, into a pyramid where it comes to sugars, sugars, dairy, gluten, omega-6s. Okay? And if you realize that these are the problems, and you realize that they're coming from very particular sources, mitigating all of the issues with overeating, being sick, inflammatory markers, gut irritability, they go away. They go away. The problem is that some people they'll say, you know what? I'm going to start doing X, Y, and Z today. I'm going to start eating salads. I'm going to start juicing vegetables. And it makes me laugh. People are like, I'm going to do a juice cleanse, and they feel worse, and they feel worse because they think they're doing better. No. The problem is that most people who get that far gone, they're actually having a terrible reaction to the plant chemicals themselves. They can't handle it anymore. It's sort of like somebody that has irritable bowel syndrome. Should they eat a high fiber diet? No, they're going to be way worse. They're going to make the problem worse. A person with diverticulitis should actually not have fiber especially when they're inflamed. But your diverticulum is meant to be extremely strong and extremely resilient. You get diverticulitis because you've been eating shit. You've been eating highly refined carbs and not a lot of fiber. And what happens is that diverticulum gets very, very weak over time. Okay? So it's like Rob does jujitsu. Rob, the first time you did jujitsu and people were grabbing at your neck all the time, grabbing at your neck. On a scale of 1 to 10, how sore was your neck the next day? A 10. If I promise you, if Rob put a gi on, and I'm a pretty strong guy, and I just started trying to do, 4-4 chokes on him, and he could sit there, I'm not kidding, for the next half hour, wake up the next day, I promise you Rob's neck won't hurt. How do I know that? Because Rob's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Rob's neck has gone through the resilience of having his neck grabbed so many times it no longer feels that. Your gut's the same way. Depending on how much fiber you put through it, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. Your immune system is the same way. Many plants work via what's called a hormetic response. It means it's an insult to your body. But over time, like resveratrol is a classic one that everybody knows, it is an absolute insult to your body. It's an insult to your body, but your body deals with it and gets stronger. And by the way, you may say, well, why is that? Because plants don't want to be eaten either. Plants don't want to be eaten, so they put out these chemicals so that animals like us and other animals in nature don't eat them. Okay? So when you take a person who has a terrible immune system, hasn't eaten plants, has only eaten refined carbs, and then all of a sudden you start giving them these things, they actually feel worse at first. So this makes sense. So again, the reason why diets fail, the reason why people fail when it comes to dieting is because they don't take the time to understand what's happening to them. What's the right way to do it? What about me as a person? This is where I'm at. This is how this makes me feel. Okay? So I try to offer reasonable understandings about how to go about this. And if this is happening to you, communicate with me and I'll explain to you what to do. Okay? So assuming, right, that you can eat plants without problems, you can eat fruits and vegetables without problems, great. Then you'll benefit. And so I want you to, the reason why I'm saying this is because I want you to notice, how do things make you feel? How do foods make you feel? And if certain things you're reactive to, I can almost predict what else you'll be reactive to. If you're telling me hummus makes you reactive, if you're telling me tomatoes make you reactive, if you're telling me eggplants make you reactive, I can tell you that you're going to be reactive to these things as well. But more importantly, I can tell you how to mitigate those problems. I can tell you how to fix it. You're going to do this. You're going to heat those foods up. You're going to cook them this way. You're going to prepare them this way. But if you don't communicate, I can't tell you what to do. Right? So there's answers to your frustration. So let me just pause for 1 second, because I know I've said a lot. Is there any question about anything that I just went through, where you want further clarification on?
You mentioned dairy, but I don't understand, is some dairy okay, others are not?
Yes, so let me get into that right now. So when it comes to dairy, when it comes to gluten, here's what I'll allow. And some of you remember from the old UTCs, after you went through 8 weeks, one of the things I said is go ahead and you can include goat milk products or sheep milk products, and you can continue to do that. But there's a technology now that has become really important. And you'll notice that Wegmans, Whole Foods, lots of food stores now are including these products. And I will explain this in detail. I won't do it here, I will explain it in detail. But you'll notice that they carry what's called A2 milk. A2 milk. Now that I'm saying it, you guys are like, oh my God, I see it everywhere now. It is everywhere. Why do you think this is a product? Do you think they made it a product because it doesn't matter? or because it really does matter. What they're doing away with is the A1 proteins, which is the most consequential for inflammation. See, the great thing about living in 2021 is the fact that we're the beneficiaries of technology. They start to realize how and why people get sick, and then they offer it to you. Just like, these companies like Kraft and General Mills tried to go, you know what, we're making people obese, how do we fix it? They offer it to you, but then people don't buy it. Now, I assure you that A2 milk tastes exactly like every other milk. But we have the technology now to do that. Now, is it ideal? It's not ideal, but I'm willing to meet you halfway. I'm willing to meet you halfway. So A2 milk is an option for your dairy. And you're going to see that they also have options in terms of, yogurt and things of that nature. God bless you. So when it comes to things like yogurts and things of this nature, can you have yogurts? Again, guys, the most important thing is when you look at the label, does it say added sugars? What I'd rather you do is take the yogurt and put your own blueberries in it, put your own blackberries in it, put your own things into the yogurt itself. Sugar, as many of you know, again, when I said earlier about these food companies, they have they've created what's called the bliss point. Your tongue acclimates to that bliss point. It's just like the gambler. The compulsive gambler doesn't stop at betting quarters. They gotta go to $1. Then they gotta go to $5. Then they gotta go to $100. The reason why is because their brain has to feel that sense of danger, that this loss could occur. The gambler is addicted to the loss. They're addicted to the emotional swing. Okay, similarly, your tongue, your palate goes, well, I'm used to this amount of sugar, and then it wants a little more and a little more. And then the problem is that it dulls out all of the other senses. They get damped out, right? The savory, right? No, I don't like that. No, it's not that you don't like it, it's just that you've killed yourself. You've killed your tongue, you've killed your palate. So as you bring the sugar down and these other things up, which we'll talk about how to do, you'll notice that everything changes. And it takes about 2 or 3 weeks to rewire this thing in your brain. And once you do it, you never have to do it again. That's the good news. So in the beginning, it's a little bit hard. Okay, a little bit hard. So, and that goes for everything else. As soon as you start lowering gluten, lowering dairy, you got to realize that your gut is used to a very particular formula down here. And your gut, literally, you're more microbial than you are cellular. And most of those bacteria live in your gut. They don't want to die. They are life too. And if you were them, what would you do? You would yell through your gut. This literally happens. This happens through the immune system as well. 70% of your immune system is in your gut. They call it a gut-brain connection. Literally, the gut is, I'm not being metaphorical here, but it's yelling in, through the walls of the intestine, hey, we need more of this type of shit you've been eating, because that bacteria thrives on those foods. So it will literally send those signals to make sure they don't die off. That's part of the problem. That's part of what's happening. It's not just the palatability, it's the bacteria that don't want to die. So if you were them, you would do the same thing. Okay. So expect to be uncomfortable. And so it goes back to that code. The code, part of the code that you need to create for yourself is start being very comfortable with being uncomfortable. Start being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like, we hold up these superheroes in these fucking movies and the Navy SEALs and all this shit because they're comfortable being uncomfortable. Use them as an archetype. Use them as an archetype. Like, guys, think about it. We have all of the resources. We don't have to hunt and gather anymore. That used to be hard. We used to have to go hunt for our food, gather our food, cook our food. Now we just go to the food store. We have no excuse to not have exactly what we need to be healthy. And yet we continue to make excuses. It's mind-boggling, right? The problem is that things are too available. Too available. So my last crown jewel, okay, and it's, you know, hypercritical, is that you must consume way, way, way more protein than you're consuming. Because protein is by far the most satiating thing. There's only three macronutrients. You have protein, you have carbs, and you have fats. That's it. Now we can break proteins down into amino acids, and those amino acids have very particular effects on your body if you consume them in higher ratios. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Then there's carbohydrates, which we'll talk about. We've already talked about in terms of simple carbs and complex carbs. But there's more than just that. You know, fiber is also a carb, and there's soluble and insoluble fiber. We'll also talk about what's called resistant starches. And then there's fats, you know, so you have your omega-3s, your omega-6s, your omega-9. You have all these omega-7s. There's all these omega fats that each of those do certain things. But protein is the thing that is by far the best deal possible going for people who want to lose weight. Why is that? Because when you look at longitudinal studies with protein, you can tell a person, hey, listen, and this is why ketogenic diets are effective for some people. Because you can overeat proteins. If you tell a person, go eat as much protein as you want, and they've done this with athletes. They've done longitudinal studies with athletes, so they say, you can eat as much protein as you want. Overfeed, have as much as you want, no end. Every single time, they will undereat their calories for the day. But it's not just about undereating their calories for the day. It's the fact that protein itself is so thermogenic. What does that mean? It means that you eat the protein. When it goes into the black box, part of what's in this black box is digestion. Digestion burns calories. How much? Well, if you're protein, it can burn up to about 30% of the calories. Fat is only about 2%. Wow, that's a great deal. So that means that if I had 1,000 calories in protein, by the time I'm done digesting it, I only ate 700 calories. If it were fat, it would be almost the entire 1,000 calories. What a deal. When it comes to losing weight, it's about protein. It's about protein. Overeat protein. What is protein? That would be meat. That would be fish. Okay? And that would be especially organic. That is a crown jewel. Now some people, let me just get into this real quick. For 8 years I was a vegetarian. My son has been a vegan for 7 or 8 years. Okay? And I am increasingly trying to stop him from doing that. Now, the reason why is, in the beginning, I was very much like, hey, listen, I understand why you're doing it, I get it. So, but here's the thing. At first, I did it for 8 years because I said, you know what? I really don't want animals to suffer. That's why I did it. And then I started to realize certain things. I started to realize that organic meat is raised a certain way and is given an opportunity to have a relatively normal life. And then I asked myself, you know, is it better to exist or not exist? Is it better for the animal to have existed or to have never existed? If I decide that, you know what, we're all never going to eat meat again, it would be a holocaust of cows throughout planet Earth. There'd be 1 million cows dead if we all decided that we're never going to eat meat again. There'd be a million cows. So if we decide to eat organic, at least we're giving animals the opportunity to exist. right? So that was part of my rationale of that's why I'm going to eat, and I'm going to eat organic. But then there's people who will say, yeah, but that I'm still not okay with not eating animals. What we see now in vegan community, when you calculate how many animals have to die in order to create a situation where you have sustainable products for kids, the amount of land that you have to do, the things you have to do, how many things have to die in that ground is astronomical. The takeaway is in order for you to exist, in order for you to thrive, something has to die. Something has to die. And so I'm just giving you that to understand that your intentions can be great, but unless you really take the time to think about everything carefully, reason it out, you may be making the wrong decision for what you think are the right decisions. And that comes down to everything that I talk about with food and health. If I'm doing something I really thought about, I can't teach you anything. Really, I can't. But I can teach you a thing. And most people don't stay with the thought long. I'm not a very smart person. I'm really not. But I just think longer than the average. That's the difference. So I say all this because I really, really want you to understand that the protein consumption is the most important thing you can do. Every single meal, ask yourself, where's my protein? Where's my protein? Where's my protein? And then things will get a lot easier for you. You're going to notice that you will lose weight. Similarly, if you're going to eat carbohydrates, try to opt for higher fiber carbohydrates. Higher fiber things. You will learn what these are. In the manual, you will see that there's an entire list of all these carbs. You're going to see that it's broken down into soluble and insoluble fiber and how you want to get a combination of both. Now why? Why fiber? Because when you consume food, it's not just the fact that fiber, nourishes your gut microbiome. That's great. That's great. It really does. Fiber breaks down into what's called short-chain fatty acids in the gut, and that nourishes your gut microbiome, which I just told you is 70% of your immune system. That's great. But what it also does is it blocks a lot of the sugar and crap through your main portal vein to your liver. So we talk about what happens to people as they get larger and larger, they get what's called fatty liver disease. But it's not just fatty liver. Every organ gets fatty. I will show you pictures of people who are obese. You take out their heart is marbled in fat. It's literally marbled in fat. Fatty liver disease is a misleading term. It's fatty organ disease. Every organ gets fatty. Every organ can get metabolically dysfunctional, meaning that they can't do their job optimally anymore. So eating a higher fiber helps block that main portal vein into your liver and becomes very protective. Okay, so and again, fiber is similar to protein, very thermogenic. It's about 15 to 20% thermogenic of your calories as it goes through this black box. So if you opt for more protein and more fiber, you can eat literally 30% more food than the next person who's eating highly refined carbs and shit and have the same result despite what's in this black box. What a deal. What a deal. So you can eat 4,000 calories, the other person eats 3,000 calories, and at the end of the day here, you guys have the same net result. Because that person opted for more protein and more fiber. It's that simple. But then, what about this black box? This black box is essentially your quote-unquote metabolism. People say, oh, I wish I had your metabolism. You can do things on a daily basis to improve it, to improve those things. And that's a lot of what I'll go into, is how to improve that stuff. Okay? So any questions on that so far?
Stand by before we start to raise things. I have 5.
Yes, so don't worry. Everything I'm going over, you guys will get this video. And in the manuals, it's so brightly colored listed and everything, like it'll be so clear what these things I'm talking about. So just to reiterate, eat organic, right? Make sure that that you're eating protein, fiber, right? Make sure you're eating, the other thing might be fruits and vegetables. So when I said, when I went into eating fruits and vegetables, I warned you guys that some people may be in a situation where you eat maybe less than optimal, depending on your gut. So pay attention. If I say eat more fruits and vegetables, and you realize that you're a lot worse, you want to be conscientious of that. Okay? Yeah, some people will. The most telling thing. That's a great question.
What's the question?
The question is when he says, when I say you will feel reactive, he said, what is it that will feel? So the most common thing is something on the skin. Guys, check this out, all right? If it's happening on your skin, it's happening in your gut. People, just think about this. Your gut is technically, this hole that goes through is technically just like your skin. It's on the outside of you. What? It's a tube. It's a tube, right? That tube, is that in you? Is the tube in you? Think about it. It's a hole that goes from here to your anus. It's a giant tube. If I put something in the tube, is it in your bloodstream? No. It's in the tube, right? It's not in your bloodstream. Do you understand that? So when something's irritating on the tube, it's just like something irritating on the skin. The gut is essentially a second skin. So the most common thing that you see if something's irritating to your gut, you'll see something on your face, you'll see a rash on your hand, you'll see something there. That's the most common thing. Some people notice a histamine response, and a histamine response is a little bit different. That'll be like runny nose, watery eyes, things like that. Histamine is a little bit of a different topic, but real simple. If you're a person that gets histamine responses, that's a genetic thing. And it can be cleaned up, but really don't want to eat leftover foods or foods that are super high in bacteria, because your body will create a histamine response. You are deficient in what's called the DAO enzyme, and that's just genetic. But the most common thing you'll see are things on the skin or in your mouth. Some people eat certain foods and they'll like get burning on their lips, things of that nature. Or you'll just get terrible indigestion. Pay attention to your poop. If you realize that you're getting cramping, if you realize that things take transit time to get out of your body, takes longer, these are all telling signs that something is going on with the food you're eating. So great question. Anything else about?
I want to add on to that, like, what about bloating?
Yep, bloating. So again, bloating is the same idea. Bloating can happen for many reasons. Some of it is going to happen because you've changed your diet, you've changed your gut microbiome. The most important things, guys, is that you hydrate between meals. Hydrating between meals is super important. You got to remember, you're mostly water. And the reason why I don't want you to have a whole bunch of water with meals is because stomach acid is meant to be very acidic. If you start diluting stomach acid, you're not going to be able to convert food properly to move into your small intestine. We'll talk a lot about digestion. But most people, when they get heartburn, it's not because their stomach acid is too acidic. It's not because they have too much stomach acid. It's the opposite. The reason why most people get heartburn is because their stomach acid sucks and it's too low. That doesn't make sense, Tom. Yes, it does, because in your stomach, in the upper esophageal sphincter, when that stomach acid is very acidic and there's enough of it, it has a reflex to close. It closes as a reflex to the acidity. So if you start bringing that pH up, meaning it's less acidic, and if the amount of acid goes down, that sphincter starts to relax. It's very easy for that shit to splash up, and as a result, you get GERD. But the other issue here goes beyond that. Food is supposed to move from your stomach into the small intestine in a very particular form. It's called chyme, a very particular melted form. And when it moves into the small intestine, that's where like all the magic happens with pancreatic enzymes and whatnot. And we'll talk about this. But my point is that if you skip a major step of digestion, there is consequence. Because guys, you're not what you eat. You're what you absorb. You're not what you eat. You're what you absorb. And if you don't have the stomach acid that is required for good digestion, it is very easy to pass that food into the small intestine that is now overburdened and can't do the things it needs to do, including emulsify fats, have proteins broken down properly, in order for them to be absorbed into the body properly. Hopefully that makes sense. So then that is one of the things, when it comes to bloating and things of this nature, make sure you're drinking water between meals. And the other thing is we'll talk about just supplementation, real basic. The most consequential supplement for digestion is magnesium. Magnesium and potassium are both electrolytes. Their job is to relax smooth muscle. Your intestines, just like your bicep, it's smooth muscle. If you want things to transit the body in time, you relax them. That's why all these laxatives are magnesium based, but they're a shitty form. They're magnesium oxide. Magnesium oxide is horribly absorbed by the body. It's mostly for your gut. It works really well to get you to shit your brains out. But if you want that magnesium in your cells, you need to take magnesium citrate, magnesium malate, anything that ends with an ATE. Again, we'll go through that very, very clearly. But about 80% of women are magnesium deficient. You're going to get most of your magnesium from eating fruits and vegetables. If it's green, that's where you're going to get most of your magnesium from. You'll also get it from nuts and seeds. Other questions about that stuff, from things that I've said? I haven't had to refer to my notes yet, but I'm going to get through them real quick. So from the things that I've talked about so far, and again, I'll put this under like the COVID umbrella. Everybody wants a better immune system, okay? So one of the most consequential things I already told you guys is oxidative stress. Well, I want you guys to, when we're done, just go onto PubMed and look at how important this molecule called glutathione is. Glutathione, it's literally the body's master antioxidant.
Can I ask a question about, is there a form, like you say, citrate, malate, or magnesium, glutathione?
Yes, well, I'm going to tell you guys right now. Right? There's a whole page devoted to just glutathione and how you can maximize your glutathione status. Look into COVID patients and deficient glutathione and their outcomes. Why would that be? It's because it is the body's master antioxidant. I just said it. I said almost all disease comes down to oxidative stress. So if glutathione is the body's master antioxidant, how can we maximize it? You ready? Here it is. Here are the things that we know that maximize glutathione. And I have 6 pages on this for you guys. You use spices. Spices. Because everybody gets taste fatigue. Spices don't just increase your glutathione. They don't just battle taste fatigue. They also protect against advanced glycation end products, which essentially is a form of oxidative stress. These plant compounds help do that. So you use spices. You increase your protein intake. a big one here is whey protein. So that's another reason why, you know, you want to have goat's milk yogurt, sheep's milk yogurt, A2 milk yogurt, or a good hormone-free whey protein. Huge implications for increasing glutathione. Fruits and vegetables, huge for increasing glutathione. Magnesium, huge for increasing glutathione. And this sounds like all things that I've been preaching forever. Yes, sir.
How about getting glutathione supplementation through like IV nutrition and stuff like that?
Yep, I'll talk about that real quick. And the last one is to not be completely carb-free, making sure you're getting quality carbs for your glutathione. So, yes, there are forms of glutathione that you can buy. The problem is that when you swallow glutathione, the stomach rips it apart very quickly, and the amount that you actually absorb is likely very little. There's liposomal, which is protected by a fat, so that it helps preserve that what the stomach is doing, and is likely more bioavailable. But even there, it's going to be less than optimal. You're better off creating endogenous. Now, what you can do, and you would need to get a prescription for this, and this does work. And by the way, like, I would actually love to look into this if this was studied for COVID. But you can get drops, and you can use what do you call it? What the hell is it called? You know, you give it a nebulizer. You can nebulize it. You can breathe it in. This can be done, and I don't know if there's research done for nebulized glutathione on COVID patients. I would love to look that up, but that does work. But obviously, you would need to get. But again, at the end of the day, most of you are like, you know, fairly healthy people. But if you want to increase your endogenous glutathione levels, that's what you do. That's what you do. Huge for immune function. The other thing is I included in the manual a whole bars. What time is it? 10:30. Perfect. I included in the manual a whole bunch of stuff, foods that are very low calorie, snacks, low calorie foods that are like very, very, very good options for you guys. Like super low calorie. Like I started making tacos with this particular form of like a rice product. I started making like bone broth soups with these very particular form of noodles. There's a Jello product in there. There's a popcorn product in there. There's a whole bunch of things that are like foods that you can add in that'll just keep your stomach filled up, that are super low calorie, very high fiber, overall net benefit for you, that will help tarnish that, boy, I'm hungry all the time type feeling. But the other thing that I put 2 pages in here have to do with mushrooms. So you may not like the taste of mushrooms. You don't have to eat the mushrooms. But mushrooms are super low calorie and super, super nutritious, especially in minerals. But one of the things I want you guys to recognize about the immune system is that the immune system works very much like this. I should tell you this. This is how cancer works. Cancer is very good at hiding from the immune system. That's how you get cancer. Literally. Literally, cancer is very good at going, you can't see me, ha, ha, ha. And by the time your immune system recognizes it, it's too late. And what you realize and what you see now in cancer research is that they use all these drugs which, surprisingly, work according to how foods work to fix cancer. I will send you guys, I'm going to send you guys a couple of things. I will send you a PhD whose only job is to research cancer drugs. And then he started to look into the foods that actually have these chemicals in them. And he realized that the foods are in many situations better than the drug that they're given. Not always, but often. I'm going to send you another one. It's Paul Stamets talking about his mother with breast cancer. and how he gave her turkey tail mushrooms, and then how they ran a longitudinal study of over 100 women with breast cancer, and you can listen to the outcomes themselves. Go on to PubMed, look into all mushroom research, and look at how good they are at bolstering your immune system.
Go into
But
what?
bolstering your immune system.
Go on to.
PubMed. So PubMed is the only thing that you should really look at if you want actual peer-reviewed studies. But peer-reviewed meaning like other PhDs critically analyzing the research. They'll tell you objectively, you know, what was done, what was weak, what was strong, what was, you know, what more study needs to be done. If you want to not kill yourself, you can just read the abstracts. Sometimes you have to buy them, but they're not expensive. But I promise you guys, if I could give you another, of all the things that I did in the 40-day challenges about immune system function, if you go on to, and this is in the manual, don't worry about it. If you go into hostdefense.com, you can just buy mushroom supplements. You can get a combination of reishi, chaga, all these mushrooms which have great, and what these compounds do, literally they go like this, they go, I see you. So anything that's attacking the body, it now takes it out of the immune system, and so that the immune system can do its job. And one of the other things I want you to understand about the immune system, and this is critically important, is that the immune system doesn't work in isolation. There's really 5 essential components to the immune system, which we've covered, and I'll go into it, you know, a little bit more in this UTC. But they all have to work together. And if any one of them is weak, the system breaks down. If any one of them is weak, and one of them is, I already told you, 70% of your immune system is your gut microbiome. That's 70% of it. So a lot of the ways that these chemicals work in your body from the plants are happening literally through the gut. Okay? So if you happen to like mushrooms, mix up your mushrooms. That's another food that is extremely satiating, extremely low calories, extremely dense in nutrition. Okay. Rob. What's that? Which mushrooms? Coffee? Yeah, so that's another thing. So a lot of you may see that there's all these mushroom coffees like Four Sigmatic. There's a bunch of them out. There's a bunch of them. And yes, mushroom coffees, absolutely. You can get the benefits from the coffees themselves if you like coffee. Four Sigmatic, and there's another company that it's eluding me now, have these mushroom blends in them. Again, like, why would they be doing this unless there was actual benefit? And if you go on to Four Sigmatic, their website, they'll tell you a lot more research. But Paul Stamets, I mean, look, I don't think I have to explain to you guys that Joe Rogan's, you know, his podcast, his following is 10 times that of CNN, CNBC put together. Like, to get onto somebody like Joe Rogan, you know, there's a list of who's who trying to get on. Paul Stamets has been in 3 times, and he's a fucking mushroom expert. Like, of all the things to talk about that's going on planet Earth, Joe Rogan is so fascinated by this guy, Paul Stamets, and what he's talking about with mushrooms, that he's on 3 times, and he's not on for a half an hour. These are like 2.5-hour conversations. And every time I listen to the guy, I'm like, holy shit. I mean, I like to hear people geek out about things, but one of the things that becomes abundantly clear is how much we're missing out on this. It's just mycelium. Like, you know, there's a lot of interesting facts that you'll learn, but mycelium has been with us a long time, and our guts naturally have a certain amount of fungus in them. You want to make sure, just like bacteria, you want to make sure it's the right fungus and the right bacteria. Most people have, not most, but some people, what you'll see is a crazy amount of candida. Some of you have heard this. So one of the ways to balance this out real simple is to make sure you have the right fungus, the right mushrooms, the right balance of everything. That makes sense? Okay. Other questions about that?
There's a guy in Red Bank that actually grows them.
Yes. There's people in Red Bank, and there's Whole Foods will buy some of those, the one in Middletown, they use local growers as well, where you'll see certain strands of mushrooms that you won't see in other Whole Foods. Just a couple last tips here. One of the biggest mistakes people will make is they'll make the mistake of drinking their calories. So you walk into Starbucks and you see somebody ordering, mochaccino, frappuccino, whatever, and they don't realize it's 700 calories. Guys, if you can relegate what you eat to and consume to be mostly water, right? You can have coffee, you can have teas, but if you make sure that you relegate yourself to mostly water, you're going to save yourself a crazy amount of calories, because most beverages are just super high sugar shit and empty calories. You're going to notice that most people, when do they do most of their overeating? It's at night. There's a reason for that. You're exhausted from the day, or like when you come home from school or whatever it is, your brain burns 20% of the body's energy. It only weighs about 3 pounds, and it burns 20% of your body's energy. So what that should mean for you is you should have planned out what you're gonna have for fucking dinner, and not make an agreement with yourself that that's what you're gonna have. And when you're done, you're done. Because I promise you that that is the time where everybody makes the mistake to overeat. Give yourself enough food. Don't undereat it. Give yourself a very large portion of protein. Give yourself some vegetables. Give yourself what you're going to eat. But when you're done, be done. The raiding of the pantry happens after that. You may say, why is it that after I eat, I go right to the pantry? There's reasons for that. There's reasons, and you will learn that. But part of the reason is because literally, well, first of all, that's a classic sign of insulin resistance. But it's also because literally people are addicted. This is a real thing. Addicted to being full. It is a real thing. People are addicted to the feeling of being really, really full. This is a real thing, well studied, well understood, and it's part of the habit that you want to get yourself out of. Part of it comes to that mindfulness. Part of it is just going, oh, this is what's happening to me right now, and this is my opportunity to stop this vicious cycle. Okay, so that means if you know that you're going to overeat at night, or whenever it is, come home from school, you have to have planned out what you're going to eat. And it's not when you get home. It should be that morning. You'd be saying, this is what I'm going to do for dinner tonight. I cannot overstate how important these rituals are, how important these agreements with yourself are, how important these codes of conduct are when it comes to wanting to transform yourself and do better. It has everything to do with these rituals. There's just a couple things I want to cover with salt, because people are under this impression that salt's like the enemy. There's a very small percentage of the population that reacts badly to salt and high blood pressure. And even there, it only raises it a couple of points. Okay? Most people, especially if you're active, you probably need more salt. What has to happen is the water needs to follow your salt intake. You have to consume enough water. You have to move your body. Salt is implicated in so many things, including healthy stomach acid, it's an electrolyte, so the ability to contract your muscles. Sodium is so important in your brain, in everything, that you need it. You need it. But you have to drink enough water, and the rest of your electrolytes have to be balanced. That means enough magnesium, enough potassium to start with. There's other electrolytes, but make sure that, now how do you get enough potassium? Again, fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables. Okay. So the other thing is when it comes to salt, you want to make sure you have an iodized salt, especially if you don't consume seafood. Iodine is the most important thing for thyroid. When you look at your blood work, TSH, T3, T4. What are those T3 and T4 things? It's iodine that you're looking at. Okay? And if you want to fuck up your thyroid, make sure you have a deficient amount of iodine. Don't eat seafood and don't have iodized salt and you're screwed. Why do we even have iodized salt? Do you ever think about that? Because iodine's that important. Okay, there was a time, 80 years ago, where we were creating thyroid problems to the society, and then we realized, oh my goodness, we're causing this problem. We better put iodine in the salt because everybody uses salt. Okay, but if you're having things like Himalayan salt, it doesn't have iodine in it. You want to make sure it says iodized salt. The last thing I want to just, and I'll get to you real quick. The last thing is, with alcohol, here's a staggering thing. And this was research in 2017. Alcohol is one of these things where it's like, it's one of the hardest things for many people to break free of. And here's why. Because the study in 2017 said that about 15% of the population is an alcoholic. That's staggering. But here's my question. Coming out of COVID, how much worse did it get? Okay? I mean, 15% of the population falls under the umbrella of you have all of the rubric to say you are an alcoholic. And that is staggering to me. How much worse did it get during COVID? So I understand, like, we're addictive creatures. We're addictive to many things. Doing away with things like alcohol can be very difficult. But I want you to realize that this has become an epidemic. And when it comes to causing things like oxidative stress and literally brain damage and insulin resistance, because alcohol is a sugar. Alcohol is implicated in many things. And doing away with alcohol may be one of the most consequential things you could do in your health. Again, I use the analogy. You wouldn't sit across from the recovering alcoholic, hey, would you want whiskey? We need to switch our paradigms and have sensitivity to people who need to get better, metabolically better. They want to be better people, right? They want to be better for themselves. They want to be better parents. I used to use this analogy all the time. Like, if you feel like shit about yourself and your self-control and your ability to manage yourself, if you don't like how you look and how you feel, if you have terrible energy levels, how good of a parent can you possibly be? How good of a partner can you possibly be? How good of an employee or a business owner could you possibly be? Right? It's worth it to yourself to make these agreements to be better. It's worth it, right? It's hard. It's hard at first, but it's worth it. So my job for the next 64 days, 10 minutes a day, is to show you guys this is how you do it. This is how you do it. We break things up into a system where you go, okay, I'm going to eat this many containers of protein, this many containers of carbs, and this many fats in a day. This is the easy part. Okay, you use these containers, and here's the problem. I'm not asking you to use containers for the rest of your life. I'm asking you to use these containers for 8 weeks. Do you know why? Because here's why. People will assume that they ate enough protein, and they didn't. And then they'll assume that they can still eat more carbs, and they can't. The other thing is that when people self-report their calories, guess who the worst offenders of self-reporting calories are? Guess who? The morbidly obese. The heavier you are, the worse understanding of how many calories you actually had. And the worst offenders, by far, are obese women. And so much so that it's often what they think that they ate, it's often twice as much. Okay, meaning that we're really bad at thinking we can keep track of anything. That's why these containers are so critically important. Because you realize, holy shit, that's a lot of protein. And then you realize that's a lot of carbs, but I definitely usually eat more than that. So you use it at first, and nobody complains. People that have done the UTC before, that in phase 1, everybody will agree, holy shit, that's a lot of food. It's a lot of food. I never get complaints that it's too little food. If anything, people will say, I can't finish my food. I'll say, okay, but make sure you eat every single bit of protein. Do not undereat the protein. All right? So, again, those people who are new, I will put out a separate video explaining to you guys that system, okay? What that body chart is, what the container system is. I will put out a separate video on many things for the newbies. Those of you that have done this before, you guys know what's going on, and you don't have to pay attention to that. But I will also do things like my food shopping. When I do my food shopping, I'll unpack my bags, and for 5 minutes, I'll say, this is what I bought, this is how I use it, this is what I do. I will try to be as practical as possible. I love food. I love to eat. But if you guys follow me and start to implement some of the things, you're going to be happier, healthier people. I promise. You're going to lose weight much more easily. You're going to notice that some of these problems with overeating become mitigated without even trying. But it's a process. It's a process. Any other questions, Brett?
On like carbs and bread, at one point it was okay to eat Ezekiel, then it was gluten-free.
Yep.
What about now?
Yep.
in,
So
like,
you
on
can
my
have
protein bread?
Ezekiel bread. So that's another thing, like that you'll see in the manual. Thank you. If I didn't say it, you can have Ezekiel bread. So the main thing about Ezekiel breads is that it's just a far less refined carb, and it's because it's minimally processed. You're going to get minimal gluten, and so unless you have a true terrible gluten sensitivity, you shouldn't eat it. But the average person, same thing with the A2 milk, you're going to dampen this inflammatory response so much more if you stay with the A2 milk and the things like Ezekiel bread. And the Ezekiel bread has lots of, they have sprouted grain, they have flax, they have cinnamon raisin, they
You
have
ever see those high protein killer breads?
yes, those are all fine. Anything, basically, the breads that are frozen, if you look at the size, if it's high fiber, high protein, and if it doesn't have sugar in it, you can have it. And there's a lot of breads like that now, a lot of them. So if you like that, do it. There's even like tortillas. They make pizza crusts that are all these companies give you all of the bread products. They're in the frozen section. Now you may say, but how are we supposed to eat it frozen? I literally get that question. Call the fucking toaster oven. Like you use your Pop-Tarts in the motherfucker every day. Like use the fucking bread. Any other questions?
Tom, do you address anything with collagen?
Yes, collagen is huge in the manual. You will see collagen mentioned many, many times. And in fact, when it comes to glutathione production, collagen is one of them, specifically glycine. So glycine is the amino acid that is implicated in collagen. But yes, you will see one of the recommendations that are in the manual. I have like these things called simple tips. I'll say things like, you'll see, but I'll explain how to get more collagen in your body. And just to give you a quick thing, there's a guy by the name of Alex Leaf. He's a very young PhD that's emerged on the scene as like an uber genius that even like these other uber geniuses are fascinated with this kid. He's like truly he's truly remarkable. But if you listen to like what are his 3 tips? One of his tips is get more collagen in your that's how important he sees this. Now, the issue with collagen is that you don't want to count collagen as part of your protein, believe it or not, even though it is a protein. Because it can't replace a very specific form of protein. You don't want to replace that with your chicken and beef and turkey and fish, but you can add more collagen into your food. And they even make flavored collagens. So if you wanted to take some flavored collagen, it's delicious, and put it on berries with a little bit of yogurt, put some nuts in there. You could do things like that. You're gonna see like there's a whole bunch of. I only covered the first 20% of the manual, and even that I did a bad job. but there's a lot of information in there. The reason why I didn't send you guys the manual is because I don't want you looking at the manual. I want you just listening to me, because the manual will give you, you'll be able to make more sense of it after having spoken to you guys today.
Do we have the manual
You will get it emailed to you, and then as soon as I get the printed manuals, I'll either mail it to you if you're far away, or you can just pick it up in the gym when you're in. But it's a 264-page full color manual. It has recipes in it. The ebook has it's the manual. So at the end, you'll see there's dozens of recipes, ideas that you could do, a whole bunch of tips and tricks. I talk a lot about sleep. I talk a lot about a lot of things that I didn't cover. That doesn't mean that it's not important. The reason why I'm not talking about sleep is because I don't think I've talked about, maybe other than digestion, I don't think I've beaten a topic into the ground more in the past 4 years to you guys than how important it is to get sleep. Okay? And so in the manual, we'll see that there's these 12 tricks to better sleep that are very easy. Other questions? Exercise. Yeah, so exercise will be, you'll see like in the 64 days, because it's phase 2, you're gonna see about, I think it's like 16 days devoted just to exercise. The other thing I'm gonna do is in 2 weeks, and this is for anybody interested, I'm gonna do a bonus seminar for about an hour in the gym, showing you guys things about exercise that, because it's just like anything else. Like when we show up and we can talk like this, I can go into way more detail. When you're just training, it just has to be good enough. Like it just has to be acceptable. So I'll do a seminar just, for an hour about very specific things with, like necks and shoulders and thoracic spine and lumbar spine and glutes and, knees and ankles and all these things that, there are all these subtleties. The devil's in the details. And if you're interested in, if you have something going on, and I'll be very reactive. Like if somebody has something going on in their body, I'll say, hey, you know what? If I were you, I would do this. But I have an agenda of what I want to show people that are the most common things done wrong with exercise, including even like paradigms. Like I'll talk a little bit about what's the problem with CrossFit, because there's a big problem. And again, it will fundamentally make sense to you. It's clear what's wrong with it, right? How should we do HIIT? How should we do, what's the problem with jogging? We'll talk about some of that stuff, but then I'm going to also make it practical to your body. I got wrist problems, I got elbow problems. Well, this is probably the things you should be doing more of, stuff like that. Other questions?
Should fasting play into this at all?
Yeah, so you'll see later on in the manual, I ask people over time to start implementing certain strategies. They're optional. So most of the time, honestly, people just do so well on phase 1, they could just do phase 1 for the rest of their lives and they're good. They're like, I just keep losing weight. Great. If you want to start implementing strategies, one of the things that you'll start to implement is is a fast day. And it's not a, it's about a 20-hour fast. I also talk about closing the eating window in the manual, meaning one of the strategies is, and again, it's just a strategy. It doesn't mean you have to do it. But if you try to condense when you eat, let's just say if you want to eat breakfast from 8 and be done by 4, if you only eat during those 8 hours, it makes it much harder to overeat. Doesn't mean that you can't overeat, because believe me, people will. But that's the whole idea. There's nothing secret about the eating window. It's simply a way to manage not overeating. So if that doesn't work for you, that's fine. But it's a way to make an agreement with yourself, because a lot of people know, like I said, that they'll eat too much at night. So as soon as they go, all right, I'm done eating at 4, they made that agreement, that's helpful for some people. There's a bunch of strategies like that, a whole bunch that we'll discuss. Same thing, there's nothing magical per se about fasting. There's a health benefit in terms of what's called cellular autophagy. It really has to do with getting cells to die, which is a good thing, because that's what happens with cancer. But we already know there's so many things that we can do for our immune system, and what I just said about, being healthy, that fasting isn't the only answer. But if it's a strategy that works for you, great. But the problem is with that cellular autophagy is it doesn't start until 20 hours into the fast. So the issue is that's why, longer fasts could make a difference for some people, but it's not a magic thing. It really does come down to these boxes. You ate this, it went through this black box, and at the end, were you in a calorie deficit? Understand one last thing. When you're in a calorie deficit, your body doesn't want to be. You're going to feel uncomfortable. You're losing weight. Most people will feel a little uncomfortable. If you feel uncomfortable, that means it's working. And one of the things that'll start to happen in a calorie deficit is you'll be lazy. You'll be more tired. You'll literally blink less. You'll fidget less. This is all the body's ways of saying you're in a calorie deficit and I need to preserve energy. So what do? If you're in the mindset of I want to lose weight, you're purposely intentional with all of the things you do. I don't miss a workout. I'm going to walk after a meal. Because you're on a mission. Your mind is much stronger than the body. The body is going to go, you're in a calorie deficit, so you got to chill, man. You got to stop moving around because you're losing all this fat, right? You're losing all this fat. You either got to go eat or sit the fuck down. That's what your body's going to be saying. Your mind's going to be going, no, I'm not going to the pantry, and I'm going to go for a walk. Evolutionarily, your body and brain are really smart. It's really, really smart. It wants homeostasis. It wants sameness. So if you're 300 pounds at 5'10", it wants you to stay there because that's what it knows. But as soon as you go, all right, I'm going to start unlocking these things, you're going to get uncomfortable. So you got to make an agreement. I'm going to be very comfortable being uncomfortable. And I know what's going to happen here. I'm going to start feeling lazy. I'm going to start feeling tired. I'm going to want to move less. That means it's working. I'm going to feel a little bit hungry. That means it's working. Because it's worth it. And over time, it only lasts about 2 weeks. Once you get on a roll of losing weight, it's shocking how you're dialed in and nothing can stop you. And here, hold on. Stand up. If I featured you in any of the emails, like Mike, Jim, Ed, Matt, stand up. Stand up if you've done the UTC before and you've lost at least 10 pounds. Stand up. Okay? Sean, you've lost lots of weight before. Stand up. Greg, you've lost lots of weight before. Okay? You've lost lots of. You've all done it. You've all done it. You know what happens. And as soon as you get into the mindset of this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm going, and nothing can stop me. It's easy. It's that beginning. It's the momentum. And that's what my job is for 64 days is to try to mitigate the discomfort. But as soon as you know that you're in for a mental war and you prepare yourself, your pantry, your environment, you get yourself in the right company, you watch the videos, you realize I'm in a mode of learning, it gets easy as shit. And as soon as you see the scale moving down, the momentum of how you feel and where you're going trumps everything else.
Week 3.
Yeah, week 3 is where it gets easy. The hardest thing is just the first 2 weeks, and it has a lot to do with the receptors in your brain. Okay? All right, guys. So listen, what's going to happen is I'm going to send you guys the ebooks. I'm going to send you guys a copy of the video. I'm going to send you as soon as the manuals come in. I'll give them to you guys. Should be at the end of this week. And any questions that you have, you can either text or email me. I'm available to you. You'll get a video tomorrow morning from me, and every morning that's 10 minutes long. I'll do a Q&A every week. In 2 weeks, I'll do another seminar here, specifically on exercise, and then we're off and running. All right.
What day is day 1?
Day 1 starts now. So day 1 starts as soon as you leave. All right. So no better time like the present. All right. No better time like the present. All right. So, but I like that question.
Yes.
So if you have questions, you can text them to me, or if you have issues that you think of later, no problem. If you're gonna stay and do kettlebell class, I'll start in about 5-10 minutes. What time is that?
11.
What time? 11. It's 11 o'clock, so I'll start in 5 minutes. Guys, if you put the chairs back inside for me, I would really appreciate it. Okay?
Sorry, in the video.